edition of the Hit Squad. I am Chad Range alongside Jesse Finney. Of course, we will always want to hear from you. Follow us on Twitter. We're at Hit Squad 101 ESPN, or you could always email us, hitsquad@101sports.com. Of course, we tackle all the big issues in the MMA world as far as UFC and any other leagues that are out there, as well as Shamrock Fighting Championships here locally. One of the big news from this past week is it's going to happen. And I know you're happy because you were not liking that December 28th Las Vegas UFC fight with Ronda Rousey and Miesha Tate being the headlining act in that one. But look out. It's going to be Silva in the rematch with Chris Weidman. And wow.
No, I think that's a great. Main event is actually to have Anderson Silva and Chris Weidman, and then you get Ronda Rousey. She's a great fighter. She's the top girl in the world, but she doesn't deserve main event status. I don't think. I think there's a co-main event. You can push them down to the co-main event. Now that's a good co-main event. That's not a main event status for
No,
New Year's Eve card coming up in Vegas. But I'm excited. I mean, now I'm looking forward to this show. If it was going to be Ronda Rousey and it was going to be Miesha Tate, I probably wouldn't have bought the pay-per-view. Now I will buy the pay-per-view.
Absolutely. And I just want to, on the heels of Anderson Silva, he was like, I want to take some months to think things at less than a week out.
Well, he had to go run and check his bank account and say, you know what, do I want an extra $2 or $3 million? And do I actually want to do this now? So yes, I don't blame Anderson Silva, but at the same time, you're at the end of the day, you're going to do what the UFC wants you to do, unless you're hurt.
Wait, do you think that it was a little bit of, I don't know, sour grapes? I don't want the belt anymore. I'm good with it. I mean, do you think it was just shock?
Anderson Silva's an odd guy. He is an odd guy. He likes to play the games that he doesn't really care about fighting. It's this and it's that. He's an extreme competitor. He wouldn't be competing when he's 37, 38 years old if he didn't really like to compete. I tell you what, he's the best MMA fighter of all time right now, and the next generation is what is scary. Now, back to Anderson Silva, do I think that he plays the game? I think he plays the game all the time with the media. I think he plays it with the media. I think he plays it with his own camp out of Black House.
He signed, like you say, he's 38 years old, signs a 10-fight deal, gets beat, and says, well, I'm good. I'm not chasing any belts. I'm thinking, well, who's he going to fight then?
He's a crybaby, and you know
that's
what?
Exactly what it is. Yeah, I mean,
that's what
I thought.
He's used to winning at everything. And when on UFC doesn't turn around and kiss his butt, basically, then you know what? Then he doesn't know what to do. Now all of a sudden they're like, okay, well, we want you to come back. We want you to come back. And guess what? Anderson Silva, mixed martial arts isn't revolved around Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva is part of mixed martial arts. So the tail doesn't wag the dog.
See, I do think that's a great point because I think there for a while he thought he was bigger.
I think he still might think that, but at the same time, now he realizes that Chris Weidman might be a little bit bigger than him.
Well, it was a big reality check, obviously.
It was good.
He got put in his place.
Absolutely. It was good for the sport. It was good for the sport. It was good for, it might be, you know what, here's the thing. This might be really good for Anderson Silva because Anderson Silva might go out and will start to dominate this next fight. Because if you look at that first fight, and I don't want to, keep going on harping on this.
No.
Because Chris Weidman was actually starting to go the opposite way. Anderson Silva was starting to go the correct way. Chris Weidman was not stopping his leg kicks. The tide was starting to turn. Am I glad that Chris Weidman ends up knocking him out?
Yeah.
I think it's great for the sport,
Absolutely.
but I also think that it's going to be probably good for Anderson Silva and see how he reacts.
Well, I think this time we're going to get to see Anderson Silva fight, and we didn't get to see that really. We got to see him do a lot of talking and poking fun, and
that's his way of fighting, though. I mean, that's his.
It has been in the last few.
It's almost Muhammad Ali thing.
Always. I would say when he was first coming up, he would fight. Then I think he got bigger than life, and he thought, well, I can joke around with these guys, and I'm better than all these guys. And then, boom, he's not.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to disagree with you to say that he's gotten more of a swag about him.
Yeah.
But I think when you're winning at his pace, you're going to get a swag about it. So, I mean, he's...
But now, wouldn't you agree that we're going to see a much different fight from Anderson Silva this time around than we saw last time?
I wouldn't bet on anything with Anderson Silva. I mean, after the way that he's been the last couple of years, you don't know.
He'll go in there and dance around and act like he's hurt and keep his hands down.
You never know.
I mean, I guess you don't, but...
You wait and see because his arrogance might get the best of him again.
That will be interesting. Are you going to let the cat out of the bag? Are you going with Weidman again?
I'm not telling you because you always take my picks.
Oh, we have a little bit of time to research. And,
right.
So that'll be... But along the same lines as the co-main event there, we talked about Ronda Rousey, Miesha Tate. You're not real excited about that. You think Rousey will probably armbar first round as always?
I do. I think that unless Miesha Tate changes a whole lot in her game plan, but I mean, that fight does not excite me. I mean, Ronda Rousey and a pair of skibbies, that excites me. That fight itself, that one does not excite me. Now, the other guys are going to be put on the card. Those fights are going to be great fights.
Now, just along those same lines, Cyborg, Chris Justino. Now she is the Invicta title holder, beating Marlos Conan. Does that fight, the element of maybe a Cyborg Ronda Rousey fight, is that the best that we're going to get out of the girls' side?
I think that's going to be the best we're going to get out of the girls' side for a long time to come. Now, that's if Cyborg is actually going to go down to 135. I don't see, maybe if they can meet in a catchweight and go to 140 pounds. But at the same time, Chad, there's also a big change here where Invicta could be getting a big TV deal where they're not going to be releasing her to go over to the UFC. You never know. But there's some things that are happening behind the scenes that I don't think you and I know. But we'll see coming up here probably
What is the word on the street for Invicta? As far as someone who's on the inside?
She's still signed with the UFC. That's the word on the street. She's still signed with the UFC, being Cyborg.
No, I mean the league itself. Is that getting any momentum?
It's going really well. They had a great show this last weekend.
You're going to probably see a lot of women coming out of Invicta making the jump to UFC.
Ooh, no, I'm actually thinking Invicta might try to go on their own and not say UFC, we don't necessarily need you. But I also think that there's Chris Cyborg who already has a signed sheet of paper saying that she is still property of the UFC, and now Invicta is actually using her.
Dana White didn't want her.
Well, he didn't want her because they didn't have a 145-pound weight class. That's why Dana White didn't want her. So Dana White always wants the top athletes, and she is the top female in the world.
Well, that's right, and that will be the fight that everyone on the women's side people want to see. Cyborg versus unless somebody really comes out. Liz Carmouche will be fighting again in Seattle. We'll be previewing that. You're hot too. 10 for 10 out of your last picks. You've been on fire.
But I had a rough go there in the beginning.
Hey, you picked it up. But some other big news from around the UFC. Anthony Pettis is going to face off against Benson Henderson, UFC 164 in Milwaukee. He's going to replace TJ Grant, who suffered an injury. A lot of injury bugs popping up now.
Well, you know what? You're thinking
you're always going to get that.
You're always thinking there's a lot of injury bugs popping up recently, but not necessarily. It's just because they're having so many fight cards right now.
Yeah, well,
they're having so many fight cards. It's bound to happen. I mean, the injuries are bound to happen. It just seems like that there's so many more right now because there's so many more fight cards.
It does feel, for the first time, I was going to mention, it's almost like we're at the All-Star break for the UFC, because it seems like every week we're previewing an upcoming Fox, an upcoming, you know, and for the first time it's been like a couple weeks out with this next one since the Silva fight, and then, you know, on the 27th.
That's interesting you say that, because I was actually driving in thinking that today.
Yeah, it feels almost like the All-Star break for the UFC as well, but along the same lines of the injury bug, Josh Koscheck, undisclosed injury forcing him out of his bout on August 3rd with Damian Maia.
Let me say something here. By this time next week, we might have some news for you that'll be extremely exciting for the St. Louis MMA folks.
Well, the funny thing is, I was going to maybe hint around to that, because we have a great interview. I think that is one of the greatest stories to come out of the UFC. Here we are at the All-Star break that we just came up with. But we got a man by the name of James Krause, and we're going to interview him coming up shortly. A great story. Give us a little feeler of what happened there.
Well, what happens is you're almost like in the AAAs where he was playing with the AAA and said, hey, listen, we're going to use you coming up. Be ready on short notice and we will come get you. And what they did is he was fighting with the RFA, which is another organization, and then he was on, I think, a 4 or 5 fight win streak and said, hey, be ready because you're going to be on short notice. And then all of a sudden they got him. Now James Krause is ready to roll, and he's in the UFC, and he's got a nice Sam Stout.
Yes. Yeah, he want to get Sam Stout, and here the guy is what was going on. Basically unemployed, didn't really have he had things that were going to probably work out for him. Gets a call, fights Sam Stout, walks away with a $100,000 payday.
Well, there's a guy that's been into it for a long time, and being James Krause. Now he's deserved that long-term
Yes,
payday.
Oh, absolutely.
So I mean, he was fighting with the RFA, which is like a AAA of the mixed martial arts world, and now all of a sudden he's in the major leagues, and now he made $100,000. He would have taken him probably about 35 years to make that with the RFA.
But it can happen that quick, and it's possible good news happen for a St. Louis fighter that quick.
Yes,
possibly.
I'll leave it at that.
There you are, former WEC.
Stay tuned.
That's right, baby. Breaking news. We're good at that here. Brian Stann officially announced his retirement after 18 fights. He's done. A lot of guys hanging it up. Do you foresee him getting on with the UFC? Because I know that's kind of been the trend.
He's a very marketable guy. He speaks very well. He represents U.S. military. I could see him with the place in the booth with Fox. I could see something with Brian Stann coming up on an official basis where he's a true professional. He knows how to speak. He knows how to do his job well. Brian Stann will probably find a job somewhere with TV or broadcasting somehow.
It's kind of their retirement plan, it seems like.
Yeah, or Tito comes back out. I don't know if you saw this. I'm going to change subject on here real fast.
I like it.
Tito Ortiz comes out and says, oh, well, I'm thinking I'm speaking with Viacom. I think I'm going to go to Bellator. No, Tito, basically just say your panties are twisted simply because the UFC hasn't offered you a job. Well, they've said it to you before, Tito. The reason I'm offering you a job is because you're a pain in the butt. Okay, so if you would like a job with the UFC, just actually simply ask for them instead of trying to play their little game.
And don't rock the boat, basically.
Don't rock the boat.
Well, we'll be rocking the boat here shortly, previewing the UFC free on Fox coming up next on 101sports.com.